So the calvernium, which is the top of the skull,
Right.
possesses the sagittal suture, coronal suture, and lambdoid,
Okay.
the two parietal bones, frontal bone, occipital. Going from posterior to anterior, we have the external occipital protuberance right here.
Okay.
The mastoid process of the temporal bone, the styloid process of the temporal bone, foramen magnum, which is in the occipital bone, the temporal bone is over here, and this is called the squamous surface of the temporal bone.
Okay.
External auditory meatus,
Meatus, or we could say canal or meatus, doesn't matter.
Right.
Okay.
and this is the internal auditory canal or meatus. And this cover for the canal is called the petrous portion of the temporal bone.
Right,
This
the
area
cover of
here.
the canal. The
This
anal-
petrous
I mean,
portion, right?
Auditory.
Mhm.
I'm thinking of work now.
We then have the arch, the zygomatic arch, which is in two portions. This is called the zygomatic portion of the temporal bone,
Okay.
and this is the temporal portion of the zygomatic bone. And together they make up the zygomatic arch.
And we need to know this one as well, right?
Well, yeah, this is the part of the frontal squama, the flat part, forehead. This is the upper margin of the orbit. This is the lower orbital margin. This is the lateral orbital margin. And this is the medial.
Okay. Upper, lower, medial, and
The sphenoid bone has two portions. It has the lesser wing on top and the greater
the
wing
greater one.
over here. There are many openings. The first one, the most lateral, is the spinosum, ovale, because it's oval, lacerum, and then the one anterior is the rotundum.
Okay. Right over there.
In the lesser wing is this opening called the optic canal. The structure that is formed between the lesser wing and the greater wing is called the sella turcica. The base of the sella turcica is called the hypophyseal fossa. And the pituitary gland is located in here.
There.
The opening on either side of the foramen magnum is called the hypoglossal foramen, right here. The opening just anterior is called the jugular foramen,
Yes.
and the carotid you can only see from the bottom. It's located right here.
What is that, carotid?
That's the carotid canal.
Carotid canal.
Right. In the front is this projection called the crista galli. That's part of the ethmoid bone.
Okay.
On either side is called the cribiform plate,
Okay.
which then descends and becomes the perpendicular plate, which you can see in here.
Okay.
And that attaches to this little point called the vomer, and the vomer and the perpendicular plate form the bony nasal septum.
Bony nasal septum.
On either side of the nasal septum are these projections, and the first one is called the inferior nasal conch, the middle nasal conch, and the superior nasal conch is all the way up on top. You can't see it.
Okay, it's the top portion.
Right.
But you can't see it.
No,
Okay.
not on these models.
So you won't add some.
Lacrimal. Yeah, I'm going to get to that. Okay, so now you have the orbit of the eye. The roof of the orbit is made up of the frontal bone.
Mm-hmm.
The lateral wall is made up of two bones, the zygomatic anteriorly and the sphenoid posteriorly.
Okay.
Zygomatic.
The medial wall is made up of the lacrimal anteriorly, which is over here, and the ethmoid posteriorly.
The lacrimal, is that the little hole there or no?
No, that's the
It's
lacrimal
just the side.
foramen.
Foramen.
But it's right over here. You can't really see it on this. Let me
Pretty
see.
much your nose, right? Like the bone in your nose is the lacrimal bone. Is that,
That's the nasal bone.
okay.
The nasalis.
This is more posterior to that, right?
The floor of the orbit is made up of the maxilla primarily and a little piece of the zygomatic laterally.
Okay.
Inside the orbit you have three openings. Inferior orbital fissure, superior orbital fissure, and this hole is called the optic foramen.
This
Right.
is the optic foramen.
Right, and you can see it coming out over here on the top.
So if you ask to add.
That's right here. And then you have two other foramen. You have one over here which is not shown,
Right.
and that's called the supraorbital foramen, and this is the inferior orbital foramen. But what I'm going to do is drill a little hole on one of these. Just-
Yeah.
Good idea.
That's about it, basically. I think I've hit all the points.